All righty then. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending this scoping meeting to discuss black sea bass recreational management options for 2026 and 2027. Black sea bass is a fairly unique species among the whole array of species that we manage because it's done jointly with the Mid-Atlantic Council and the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. And we have these opportunities to create rules from year to year that best fit the interests of the anglers in our state, and that's very unique. Similarly, we do that with SCUP and Fluke when rules are about to change. But tonight, the conversation is about black sea bass. The ASMFC and the Mid-Atlantic Council create targets for harvest, and our goal is to select management measures that best serve you, the recreational anglers. Although I've seen some of the survey results, and I know there's quite an array of opinions on how to move forward. We are allowed to increase the coastwide harvest by about 20%, and we are providing this public input opportunity because we can't go to a normal public hearing given the time constraints. Under normal rulemaking, we usually require about 5 or 6 months from the beginning to the end of changing a regulation. But with these co-managed species, we don't get our marching orders or we don't get our targets until around December. And then it doesn't provide enough time for us to get input and have rules in place in time for the season opening or when the fish are going to arrive. So we're holding this meeting. We've done these in past years. We're holding this meeting tonight. And as I mentioned before, there's a angler preference survey that we published on social media, and we've had almost 900 responses, including some individual comments about why people are promoting one position or the other. Obviously, the options that we have before us are amendments to the size limit, amendments to the bag limit, or amendments to the season. So we DMF are going to make a recommendation to our Marine Fisheries Advisory Commission at our March meeting with the expectation that when we enact emergency regulations, that we will have had giving you ample opportunity to comment, and our commission will feel comfortable having the benefit of your comments. And then once we enact the rules, one small detail is we'll have to make it a permanent rule later in the season, but because it really wouldn't be very practical to change regulations midstream, the understanding between the division and its Marine Fisheries Advisory Commission on this emergency rule process is once we adopt a proposal in March, we're going to take that forward to the ASMFC and make it a final rule for the next 2 years. And so that's why we're here tonight. So thank you, everybody, for attending. I'm going to now turn the presentation over to Nicola Meserve, who is my proxy at the ASMFC. And so, Nicola, why don't you take it away?
Okay, thank you, Dan. And I'll just reiterate your comments, thanking everyone for being here tonight. I will start with a little bit more on the timeline. Dan covered some of these kind of critical points, but the timeline for these rules is really based off of what happens at the ASMFC and Mid-Atlantic Council and their timeline. So it goes all the way back to mid-August of last year when the 2025 stock assessment for black sea bass was made available, and that was used as the basis for setting the coastwide recreational harvest limit for 2026 and 2027. Um, then in mid-December, those bodies reconvene and they do the process called the recreational measure setting process to figure out what the combination of the recreational harvest limit, what that actually means in terms of are we trying to increase coastwide harvest, decrease coastwide harvest, or keep it at the same level. The next meeting is going to be on February 4th, where the ASMFC will establish regional targets and any rules for the states and regions to develop their proposals. And there will be another meeting sometime in early March, a date to be determined still, where the ASMC will meet again to approve the range of proposals and a deadline of April 1st for the states to let ASMC know which measures have been selected. So we are inserting our own process into that with the scoping meeting tonight and the survey that we put out, some of the results, kind of summary results. We'll look at those tonight to help inform the discussion. We plan to consult with our Marine Fisheries Advisory Commission, both at a February 10th meeting and a March 17th meeting, and go through the emergency rulemaking process to get measures in place by May 1st. Ideally, announcing the rules prior to that. And I know that there is particular interest in the season start date, so we will do our best to get that piece of information out, as soon as possible. Um, Regarding how we go about determining our measures, the recreational harvest limit for the coming year is just one piece of the puzzle. The recreational measure setting process also looks at what the projected harvest is going to be under the status quo rules and compares that to the recreational harvest limit. It also looks at the uncertainty around the MRIP estimates that we use and the projected harvest. And then I also consider stock biomass, which for sea bass continues to be in a very high biomass situation. So those factors together are what led to the 20% coastwide harvest increase that will be applied with the states changing their rules for 2026, and then we're expected to keep them status quo for 2027. That next step will be determining how the 20% is distributed among the three recreational sea bass regions that we use, which is Mass through New York, New Jersey as a standalone region, and then Delaware through North Carolina. The board could decide that each of those regions gets a 20% liberalization, or it could, look at some other FMP language that suggests that we should be looking at things like fishery performance and resource distribution and how to reduce interregional disparities when possible, taking into account regional differences. So through that process, we'll end up with a regional harvest target for Mass through New York, and then it will be up to the states in our region to work together to establish individual state measures that collectively achieve that regional harvest target. And there is some fishery management plan guidance about how that should be done. And in this type of situation, which is a regional liberalization, states should develop their measures in a manner that collectively reduces intra-regional disparities. And I'm sure there's a lot of opinions about, the equity in the northern region and in between the different regions. So, that type of information should be taken into consideration. I think the bottom line really of this slide, though, is that because of that kind of interregion decision that has to be made, and then the interregional negotiations about measures, we don't know exactly what our harvest target is yet. We're going to use 20% as the basis of our discussion today. I would hope that it would be a little bit more than 20%, but we don't know that yet. But once we know what that is, all the states are using what's called the recreation demand model to evaluate different measures. And so we'll provide some kind of early results of using that model to look at different measures, but we don't have specific options developed yet today because we don't actually know what the harvest target is exactly. So this is kind of the play of measures as of last year for all the states in the management unit. It shows you also the three regions are boxed out a bit. So, and the percentage of harvest in the last couple of years from each of those regions is shown on the far right side to give you an idea of their contribution to this whole, coastwide fishery. Within the northern region, we're pretty similar on size limit, a bit different on bag limit and an open season. So there's definitely room there to bring the measures closer together through the 20% liberalization. And our region collectively has been about 57% of the coastwide harvest in recent years. New Jersey is in its own region, about 20% of the coastwide harvest, and then the southern states are the minority of harvest, 15% the last couple of years on average. And they have much more closely aligned measures in the southern region. This table here just gives you an idea of where we've been over the last 15 years with black sea bass management. It is a story of mostly reductions or status quo measures. There's only 2 years within this 15-year timeline where liberalizations have been allowed. So over time, the measures kind of caught up with where we needed the harvest to be in relation to that recreational harvest limit. And so over time, you can see a reduction in the season and a decrease in the bag and an increase in the minimum size. We've been status quo technically since 2023, 2024, and 2025. There's just a small adjustment in the season to keep a Saturday opening date, which required a couple days to come off the end of the season each of those times that we did that. But the last change was really in 2023 when a 10% reduction was needed, and that's when we went up in a half inch from 16 to 16.5 and took a couple days off the end of the season. I'm going to move into now just to kind of describing our black sea bass fishery a little bit more. This graph shows you the harvest in blue bars, the dead discards in orange. Dead discards are estimated as 15% of alive releases, and then the green line is our total catch, which is the combination of harvest and releases. And you can see that our fishery really took off around 2010. And as sea bass became very abundant in our region and a very healthy stock, and our total catch has really remained pretty stable since that time period, averaging around 3 million fish. Whereas harvest peaked in 2010 before there was a lot of regulations in place, and has decreased over the time series, and the dead discards have increased over that time period as well, such that in 2024, the harvest in Massachusetts was about 300,000 fish, and the dead discards were 450,000 fish. So in the most recent 3 years, dead discards have exceeded harvest in our state, and that is a trend that you also see coastwide. If we look at our harvest by fishing mode, we can see that based on the current MRIP estimates, private rental vessels dominate the harvest with about 90% in 2024, followed by a 10% contribution from for hire vessels and less than 1% from shore in 2024. I want to note, however, that these proportions are anticipated to change. The MREP, or Marine Recreational Information Program, from where all these estimates are coming from, is anticipated to recalibrate the estimates for the private rental vessel and shore modes based on a change to the survey protocol. It's anticipated to reduce the harvest estimates from those two modes. The for hire mode is not going to be affected by that because there's a different effort survey for that. So the result is that the for hire contribution I would anticipate is a little bit higher than what you're seeing on this graph, but that still somewhere around still the majority will be in the private rental vessel mode. These two graphs look at our catch across the season. So we use the term wave to describe a 2-month period. That is how the recreational catch estimates are released. So May, June is considered to be wave three, and on the top panel, you can see that harvest is shown there on that top panel. You can see that our harvest is generally majority from the May, June period, with less from July and August, and the smallest amount from September and October. Of course, we are not often, we only have a couple days open in September and October, well, September in these years, so you wouldn't anticipate much harvest. Um, Keep in mind that in all of these MRIP estimates that we're seeing here, the 2025 estimates are preliminary. They're through August only, which shouldn't affect the 2025 harvest estimate much here, but it would influence the releases that you see on the bottom panel. So there is some variability in terms of which wave produces the highest amount of releases, but all of them can be major contributors to our releases. With, of course, the estimates in September and October, driven by the close season. Um, these graphs give you an idea of how many fish anglers are keeping per trip. And you can see, and it's broken out across those waves again, May, June, July, August, and September and October. This pools a couple years worth of data to be better informed. But you can see on the most left panel that during May and June, there is a high frequency of anglers limiting out at the four fish bag, with then lesser amounts of three, two, and one fish being kept. It's a very different trend when you look at the July and August data, which shows that most anglers are keeping one or two fish during that time period. And then I would hesitate to try to describe or characterize September and October from the limited data that we have here. Um, Then looking at length frequency, just to give you an idea of what we're catching in terms of the sizes. Across the last couple of years, most harvested fish have been in the 16.5 to 21-inch range. So, some width to the available sizes there. The data does suggest that there may be some size selectivity on the angler basis for fish that are larger than the minimum size of 16.5. From the main graph on the left, you can see that fish in 17 and 18 inches, those are the most frequently harvested fish. Some of that will have to do with size availability, year class strength, but some of this may be suggested that anglers are preferring to release fish that are just above the size limit and aiming for larger fish when they have the opportunity. And then the smaller graphs on the right-hand side break this data down by year, and looking at it that way, it does suggest that there may have been some truncation in the range of legal sizes in 2025, with less larger fish being caught. What these graphs don't tell us anything about, these are just the harvested fish. It doesn't tell you anything about the released fish, and what can be informative to thinking about, our releases of fish just below the size limit is looking at the year class strength. This graph is from the 2025 stock assessment, and it's the estimates of age one recruitment into the population. And you can see towards the end of the time series that there are above average year classes from 2021 and 2022. And at the age that they were last year, and certainly the year prior to that, they were short of the 16.5-inch minimum size, and will begin to grow into harvestable sizes over the next 2 years. Certainly not all of them, but some of them will be attaining legal size in 2026, and more so in 2027. So moving on to the survey results. I find these really interesting to look at because we get a lot of responses from a lot of different folks. And so this first graph gives you just some of the, or this first slide gives you just some of the demographic information that we collected from the 858 respondents as of this morning. Um, the majority of them, 94%, were responding as recreational anglers, 6% as for hire businesses. I believe there was one individual that identified as bait industry. Um, we had, about three-quarters were responding as residents of Massachusetts, but we got almost 25% from out-of-state individuals. 67% identified as fishing primarily for black sea bass from a private vessel, 26% from party charter, and 6% from shore. And then the majority, 53%, fell into a 6 to 20 trips for black sea bass last year. And then they also identified their primary fishing grounds, and Buzzards Bay and Vineyard and Nantucket Sounds, remain the dominant fishing grounds, but there is effort throughout the Massachusetts coastline. Um, so while we did collect this information to help inform the responses to the management preference questions, we haven't broken down those responses by any of these like different characteristics yet. But that's something we may do as we continue to look at our options. But I just haven't done it yet. But moving into the results, we asked people to rank their preferred approach for liberalizing the measures, considering lengthening the season, decreasing the minimum size, and increasing the daily bag limit. Lengthening the season was the highest first choice rank, followed by decreasing the minimum size and increasing the daily limit. Um, in terms of the last choice, decreasing the minimum size had the highest rank for being the last choice. We also asked about a question that was based on having a variable bag limit. All the other states within our region, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New York, have a management approach where they have a higher bag limit during some months and a lower bag limit during other months. So if we wanted to consider that type of approach, we asked what 2 months you would rank as your priority for that higher bag limit. And May, June was the clear winner, compared to the other options of July, August, and September and October that were given. And September, October, ranked the highest for being the last choice to have a higher bag limit. We also asked if how late you would fish into September or October, if the season remained open. And 46% said they would fish all the way through October 31st. Another way of looking at that might be that 54% would be done by October 15th. If you added up the 7, 7, 17, and 23 percentages. But certainly a lot of interest to continue fishing into September and October if possible. And then we asked if a half-inch size limit reduction would be a meaningful management change, and 58% said yes, and 42% said no. So I want to just kind of caveat that we ask these questions kind of in a vacuum, though, without saying how much it would use up of the increase and what would the trade-offs be for doing these different measures. So I'm sure that with some of the information that I'm about to share about, more discrete, you know, changes to the measures, it might change what people thought about a half-inch size limit reduction, for example. So that's where we started to look at just changing, what does it mean to change just one management measure in terms of how much it increases harvest? So compared to the 2025 rules, which again, May 17 to September 1, 4 fish and 16.5 inches, we looked at first reducing the size limit by that half inch is a 11% increase. So that takes up a pretty sizable chunk of what we're anticipating for our liberalization. And going down a whole inch to 15.5 inches is a 24% increase, which means there would have to be some real, trade-offs in the other measures to get down a whole inch to 15.5 inches. Um, Looking at bag limit changes within the context of the current season, going up in the bag, either 5 fish or 7 fish here were very small increases in overall harvest. I think some of that is based on, in July and August, we saw how most anglers are taking 1 or 2 fish. So going from 4 to 5 fish doesn't make a big difference in the harvest then. I would expect that, all of this increase that you're seeing, even though it's quite small, would be occurring in that May, June period. Um, and then looking at season, that's where we get kind of our biggest changes in expected harvest. We looked at, just for starters, if you look at either the third or fourth Saturday as a starting date, so May 16th or May 23rd, and going through September 30th, those result in 27 and 23% increases in harvest. So whether or not that is an achievable real option, I can't say yet until we kind of have those regional negotiations about, how much each state is really looking to increase their harvest, but that gives you an idea of what it would take to get through September 30th at the 4 fish bag limit, and 16.5 inch minimum size. And also kind of what that difference between May 16th and May 23rd is about, a 4% difference in how much the harvest would increase to have that, to start on the third Saturday as opposed to the fourth Saturday in May. But so because getting out to September at 4 fish was such a large increase, we also looked at a couple options that would drop the bag limit at some point during the season. So the first option, called Split Bag September Drop, drops the bag limit from 4 to 2 fish beginning on September 1st and keeps it open that way through October 31st. That's a 25% increase when you use the May 23rd start date and a 30% increase if you look at May 16th. So those may be more than we can do again. So we also looked at, what if you dropped to the 2 fish bag limit beginning July 1st? And so that's an 18% increase with the May 23rd start and the 23% increase with the May 16th start. And then the last row here was an attempt to see what we would have to give up to get to a 16-inch size limit throughout the season. So that looks at the 2 fish bag limit beginning on July 1 and only going through September 30th, whereas the two options above went through October 31st. And those were 26% increases with the May 23rd start and a 31% increase with the May 16th start. So those numbers suggest to me that we would have to make some other additional trade-off, either to season length or the bag limit, in order to get that 16-inch size limit. So at this point, we are going to turn it over to all of you to provide us. You can ask clarifying questions, which we'll do our best to answer, and then also take comments. You will need to use the raise hand feature in Zoom to get put in a queue to ask those questions or provide comments, and then we'll unmute you one at a time.
Yeah, so Nico, I think it would be beneficial to let someone ask a question and provide comments during the same time. Sometimes we do it the other way. We just take clarifying questions, but we can wing this and people can ask their questions and give us their comments. Nice
Sounds
job,
good.
Nicola. Thank you.
Captain Vin McCarthy, just you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you now. Yep.
Okay, good. First off, great job. Incredible amount of data that you've done here. Just looking at everything that you've got. One thing that really kind of sticks out from both from the graphs that you've presented and from our own experiences on the water, when we went to the 16.5 inch fish, the dead catch or the bycatch, if you would, it just went right through the roof. I mean, to the point where, you got guys on the boat. They came up from New York. They're in there fishing. You want to give them a great day. You want to load them up, and now you got 8 fish over the side that are all short. 9 fish, and then you finally get one. Then you get another one, and what happens is it doesn't seem like a lot, but you put 20 people on a boat. You do that 4 times for each individual, and then you run 2 boats a day. That's a lot. That's a lot of hurt fish. So if we could bring it down a little bit, I think we could really reduce some of that dead bycatch. Bring it back down to 16 inches. That would be very beneficial, I think. The other part would be opening up the season up in May, when we've got that beautiful. I mean, there's nothing better than fishing in May. You got scup, you got sea bass, you got striped bass, and the shops. Everybody's had this long, hard winter. I know. I also work at a store, and this is when you got to start making some money. You got to, you've been keeping the lights on, you've been paying the heat, so anything you can do to help us out would really be appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
Thank you for your time.
Did we
Rick,
have a next hand, Bradley? Okay.
sorry, I didn't unmute myself. Rick, you can unmute yourself. Rick Medeiros, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. You can just unmute yourself. Rick, are you there?
Let's try the next one and we'll come back to Rick if we can.
All right. All right. Eric Morrow, if you can
Yes,
hear
good
me, you can
evening.
unmute yourself.
Hi,
Can you hear me?
Eric. You
Yeah,
can.
another year. Here we go. Well, as you know, it'll be many years here, probably through 3 directors worth of It's Going to Get Better Soon, I've been listening to, and now it's on the table. Um, May 16th, there really is no options on the open, and May 21st, you're costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars for hire fleet. We've been through this year after year after year. So, 21st, there's no way that's going to work. I'm having a little hard time understanding how, if we went to September 30th, where are we getting the information for the fall fishery to come up with that catch? Like you said, we're going to go way over like 30%. We have no history in the fall of fishing. After Labor Day, 80% of your people, your recreational anglers, are done for the year, especially with the kind of falls we've had. And I know you saw it on your survey, but of course, somebody that doesn't have blood in the game like me here, or our Fahara guys, of course they're going to want a longer season. You sent a survey out. More is better. But I fish till Christmas every year. I moved to Rhode Island. I keep going to chase the fish. But once you get into September, this ain't nobody's 17-foot Boston whaler fishery. So I think your people are overexcited looking for that longer season, but I don't think the effort's going to be there. Maybe 10% of the people, maybe. But if you're not running a decent sized hull, all you are is a hazard for marine fishery, for the Coast Guard or anybody else come rescue you. So I think people are overzealous on your survey, pushing for that. I'm going to fish till October 30th. They're not. Okay. But I'm trying to understand where you got the data to say we're going to be 30% when we have no history of that. And the effort mainly is going to be weekend warriors because the summer's over. People fishing on the weekends and then the head boats. But even on the for hire fleet, most of us are tuna fishing or striper fishing. There's only a handful of us that'll remain ground fishing. I'm just really trying to put my head around how we got to 30% if we went to September 30th.
Yep, it's a good question, Eric, and we have similar questions that we are trying to get answered by the modelers. These measures were not evaluated in-house by DMF staff. There was a model provided to us that we can put in different measures, and it tells us what the projected harvest is. And so we are currently trying to figure out exactly what is informing the September and October catch rates, and really are questioning some of the results that we're getting. So, we're providing these now because it's what we have, but know that we are also asking those questions. We would also anticipate that there's going to be a pretty significant drop off in directed trips in across September and October. So we want to make sure to get this right. So we are asking those questions.
Okay, and then one other thing, just what I'm on for a minute here. A big advocate for the 16 inches as Captain Vin. He's been with me for I don't even know 18 years now, 16 years, long time. The 16 inches, definitely. I know this all goes back to MREP data, and that's why those graphs to me are skewed. These 19, 20, 21 inch fishes. I've been doing this 30 years. I guess the people that interact with MREP are better fishermen than me, I guess. I do this for a living every day. I don't see the size of those fish they're talking about unless they intercept somebody that is strictly jigging with big diamond jigs and a big old gulp and they're heading down the Nomans. Yeah, then they'll get those fish. But for the average angler, God, I just don't see that. I think the 16 inches is going to reduce a lot of waste. It's going to give people a better chance to actually come home with something to eat. When we went to 16 and a half, the for hire fleet, we're watching business just get less and less and less because we've talked about this for years. They're not going to drive 5 hours to get discouraged and catch one keeper. I mean, I can tell you, I might have had 2 trips all year where I caught a limit of sea bass for the whole boat for all 20 people, like legit legal 16 and a half inch sea bass. And I do this for a living. So I don't think those numbers are right either, but 16 inches is going to make a big difference. One more thing to bring into it on the angler, especially for hire guys. It's costing me at least $200 to $300 a day feeding these juvenile sea bass because people don't look at this aspect from the businesses. I go out, bring up 120 pounds of clams, 450 a pound, squid, all of that. Okay, you get out there, the customers get discouraged, or just the general. You catch really small fish constantly all day long. They'll get discouraged, and then they start globbing all the bait on, whatever they got to do. I mean, I want them to catch, but it's almost like lobster fish. I feel like a lobster guy. I'm feeding the resource to get bigger. And that's just an added expense on top of this. So if I can get the people their fish, make them happy, and get off the fish and go move on and do something else, that would be a lot less frustration for the angler, less frustration for me, and you'd have happier people coming and fishing in the Massachusetts state waters. I think that's good for right now.
Thanks, Eric.
William Hatch, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. I see you're unmuted, William. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Nicola, thank you. That was a great presentation, a lot of good information. So I'm speaking on behalf of Stellwater Bank Charter Boat Association and Cape Cod Charter Boat Association. Both of our associations had meetings last week, and we both had discussions over sea bass and the survey and what we would like to see. And I think a lot of what we talked about was speculation because we did not know kind of what the analysis of the alternative measures were going to be. And after seeing these measures, I think a lot of people would actually change their minds as to how we would like to take the liberalizations, myself included. So it's hard for me to speak for everybody because I think they'd change their mind if they saw some of the options. One thing that I know that we all agree upon is the start date, May 16th. It's always been our historic start date of that Saturday before Memorial Day weekend. It's probably the most important week of the season for us for black sea bass. It's a shoulder season. Most of the for-hire fleet, it's really the start of our season. We've all got 2 trips a day. We're booked every day. It really is a big boost to the economy during the shoulder season. The tackle shops kind of gets everybody out of the hole. So that's one thing that I know that really we don't want to change. Seeing the options for 5 or 7 fish and only seeing the liberalization go up by 1 or 3%. That it's funny. We didn't even think about increasing the bag limit, but myself personally, if we could go up to 7 fish at 3% of an increase, I'd probably jump all over that. I know Eric and Vin there spoke about the high level of discard. You spoke about it also during the presentation, and the fact that we're actually creating more discards than harvest, I mean, that's a real kind of waste of the resource. So if there's a way to reduce the size limit and reduce discard, I think that's a better use of the resource. I think overall, if people were able to see these, the analysis of the alternative measures, and you redid the survey, I think you'd get very different results. So it might be worth sending out the survey with more information, because we all kind of tried to speculate what those options were without seeing kind of those graphs and the analysis. We wanted to increase in days and reduce the size, but now seeing that we could go to 5 or 7 fish with a small liberalization, I think that people would have a lot more appetite for that. I think that's it. I like the idea of the split bag. Wave 3, very important. I have a high bag. People come here historically from the New York metropolitan area. They travel a long way. They want to bring fish home. In the fall, we got to compete with New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut. They've all got much higher bag limits, 6, 7, 10 fish, 15 fish, even in New Jersey. It's more of a bycatch fishery for us, but it's still important. People striper fishing, tautog fishing, and fluke fishing, they can bring a couple sea bass home for dinner if they want us bycatch. So I appreciate the opportunity to comment. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks, Willie.
Joe Petner, you can speak and unmute yourself.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I'm Dan. Thanks for your efforts, and Nicole, thank you for yours. I think it's always important to consider the biomass, and I think there are signs that certainly this stock is healthy, sustainable, not overfished. I'm going to take some exception. I'm going to take a different pathway. I'm 80 years old and I have fished for the last 60 years. I am truly a recreational fisher. I understand the charter guys, and I have chartered from time to time, and but we call it recreational. Recreational is really for pleasure rather than for profit. When Eric says he does this for a living, and much of the comments by the charter captains are around the economics of it. So I don't know how you get this to be right, because the true recreational guys, I think, are have very little voice here. I'm part of any coalition or anything like that, and it's just patently unfair. Pay my taxes in Massachusetts, and I certainly here coming up from New York, and all of that. And it's just not, there's a fundamental problem here of fairness. And so I think that if you take the side around the conservation, yeah, May's a great season. You can catch your bag limit in 15 minutes. I can, as myself and my buddy are out fishing, because that's when the fish are in, they're close in and they're spawning. If conservation is a concern, we ought to move it back just for that reason. But yeah, I would appreciate a couple of more weeks in September, and I'm willing to say that let's start, whether tradition or not, let's start Memorial Day weekend. The weather in May isn't all that settled to begin with, especially if you're just fishing on the weekends, which I have the luxury now as being somewhat retired. I don't have to do. So I just think that you're going to cater to the charter guys, and fine, create another category where they can advocate for what they need to do, and if they're doing this for a living. But it's sort of it's a misnomer to say that this is the recreational side of the equation. It's not. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Joseph Huckemeyer, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yep.
Thanks, Nicola and Dan, for putting this together. A couple of comments. Um, the first and most important is that the start date has to stay the week before. Every party boat and every charter boat is booked solid for that week. That's our best week of our whole season, is that week. If you take sea bass away from that week, it'll be just like the week prior, where we go out with a handful and everybody waiting. So our Porgy sea bass spring season that used to be 7, 8 weeks is now 4 weeks, will become 3 weeks. That's a no starter for anybody in the party charter industry. It would it would be nice to get a half-inch reduction. That would be my second choice for changes. For a 1% increase, I would say it's a no-brainer to go to 5 fish. And then obviously it'd be nice to go later in the season. I would say that 20% increase by adding September is absurd. When I'm out there in September, you see a couple of boats around. The party charter boat fleet is just about done. If not completely done, there's an odd weekend trip, a couple of charter boats during the week for bottom fishing. There's After the second week of September, you're lucky if you see one other boat, two other boats on all of Nantucket Sound going across the Sound. It's the 20% increase. I'm not sure how they came up with that number. So a couple of things. Couple of questions. One question. When the seasonal change model was put together, is that just Massachusetts?
So what we're showing here for the analysis of measures, that's just Massachusetts data, yes.
Because it would make sense that it was more than that, because as we go real quiet here in Mass, the other states down the coast get busy. So, from Rhode Island down. So I'm blown away by that number. I would think that it would be, 5 or 8%, not 27%. And that's just from what I see on Nantucket Sound. I bet you it's the same on Vineyard Sound as well. And just another comment as well is that, I appreciate the woman that spoke about the private angler. I'm sure most private anglers don't know that the party charter fleet, as you know, we've been trying for the longest time to get separated out. if we go back in time, the party charter industry encompassed 80 or 85% of the sea bass fishery for years. And then as regulations pressed on, we got pushed down to single digits, and the private angler, retains most of the sea bass that are caught in the state. Now, you say there's going to be some changes made, but it's still, the percentages are astronomical, how it's changed. The one thing that people have to keep in mind is that, although, we are a business as a party or charter boat, we represent tens and tens of thousands of recreational anglers. It's just the mode how they get out there. They don't have a boat. This is their way that they get out to go fishing. But just to go back to the regulations, just once again, May 16th is a no start, or anything later than that. It'll crush the party charter boat industry, especially at this point, because everything's already booked. Half-inch decrease would be great. One fish more would be great. Maybe a reduction, split the season if you had to get a little longer season. Later in the season, go a little lighter. Maybe, it doesn't seem like you gain much, but it'd be nice to get to September 15th, on the season. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Joe.
Rick Medeiros, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Apologize, I'm not good at public speaking, but I'm gonna try this. First of all, thank you, Nicola, for this presentation. Everything was great. We had a couple issues here. I'm new to the higher fleet here, just being in this for 9 years now. But what I've seen is the discard of fish under 16 and a half inches. I don't know about a lot of the other guys in the charter business, but in mine, it's outrageous. I mean, you're going through 8 or 9 fish to get one at that 16 and a half. A lot of 16s getting thrown back. I'm just worried about the mortality rate that's going on. But going through your charts, it's through the roof, for what I can see. Another question I would have is, would it be a for hire limit change as far as different than recreational anglers? Would that be a possibility?
I mean, we haven't considered it in the measures presented, but I might turn to Dan to get any input on that. We've hesitated to separate them out in the past, and partly because of the data. Breaking each time you break down the MRIP data into a more fine scale, you increase the uncertainty of that data and your ability to use it in the future to evaluate measures.
Correct.
And I guess right now the ASMC and the Mid-Atlantic Council are working on a possible amendment or addendum. It's in the early phases that might look at sector separation or mode management for these species. So, while that process is going on, an argument could be made to wait for that to be borne out before looking at that type of option here.
Yeah,
Okay.
Nick, or if I could add, one
Please.
of the challenges too is you had mentioned earlier about the MRIP recalibration, which could lower the estimated catch by most likely by the private anglers. And so if we were to sort of adopt sort of like targets for our for hire versus our private, then whatever that ratio was, if we decide on it today, could change based on some new data that we expect to come out in the next half a year. So I'm not in favor of promoting that or proposing it this year till we see how this shakes out. One of the challenges, of course, is that it's a raging debate among the managers and including the industries, because there hasn't been any interest in the for hire fleet, if they were going to get separate regulations, to have a separate target catch. I mean, one of the things that I worry about is if the for hire fleet were to have its own regulations, boutique regulations, there would need to be sort of a target catch amount. And what would happen if we exceeded that? So right now, the for hire fleet is rolled into the overall recreational fleet. But some of the for hire industry members have sort of argued like, well, if we go to reporting, then we'll get better data, and you'll be able to enumerate that better. But at the end of the day, I'd hate to see the for hire fishery get closed like late summer because the catch rates were higher than expected. So this
Right.
is a something that's very much in debate right now, but I think it would be premature to do it this year.
Okay. As far as the season goes, I definitely agree with Captain Vinny, Captain Eric, and the other gentleman that spoke. May 16th, I mean, should be a must. That's our startup week. That's our busy season. The business that it brings into the bait shops, the tackle shops in the area, us charter captains, it's literally we run 2-3 trips a day, starting that week, and pushing it back lowers it down to almost 3 weeks of the season, which is outrageous. As far as going later in the season, September, okay. October, I mean, we're out there. We're going offshore. We're doing tuna fishing. We're doing other stuff. Do other people still fish for sea bass? Probably. But I don't see extending it to October to get that 20% increase. That's outrageous numbers. And as far as the fish bag limit, we're at 3% going to 7 fish. I would be in favor for that. So take it as it is. I mean, you guys are professionals here. We're just putting our input. So I appreciate all the help.
Thank you, Rick.
No problem.
Tyler, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Thank you for all the information you guys have provided. One comment I have on this, or a few comments, I agree. I don't see how extending the sea bass till, through September and October would, result up to a 20 to 30% increase. There is less boats on the water at time of the year, but I am in favor for extending the season due to, I mean, a lot of us are tog anglers. We're out there, making efforts through all of September and through most of October. And there's a lot of bycatch of sea bass throughout the whole season. And, being able to retain one or two of those would be greatly beneficial instead of the starting fish. And you'd also see, less anglers flock to states like Rhode Island, where, they have a fall sea bass fishery. They'll take up their tod fishing out of state because they can retain sea bass instead of fishing in state. So I think you'd see an increase of, at least a few more anglers on the water, but I don't see how it would extend out to 20%. And back with the May 16th, I think is a great, keep it at the start date as we've all made note that, that's the busiest week, the first, 2 weeks of the season. But I think 16 and a half, honestly, I mean, if you keep it at 16 and a half to extend it later in the season, I think that'd be a greater way for, for everyone to get on some fish. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tyler.
Jevin, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
How's it going, y'all? I just want to say you guys put together a nice presentation. I'm Jevin Pimentel. I am a deckhand for a hire boat, but I'm also a member of the Public Safety and Natural Resource Commission for the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. So you guys technically know, your quotas and stuff don't affect me as a person, but on the back end of it, I'm looking at the size limit on the fish. So working on a boat all through the summer, I see, 16-inch fish being brought over. And it's amazing how many fish that we release that we can't take that end up dying. So I definitely think that needs to be looked at, especially, like I said, from the native roots aspect. It kills me to throw a fish over that is not going to be able to be consumed. So I think you guys need to decrease that half inch at least on the minimum. Fishing Buzzards Bay my whole life, I done seen, the numbers are still there. They have decreased and increased and increased over time, but they're still there. They're holding strong, especially around those dates. And seeing, like I said, this ain't me speaking for behalf of the commercial guy or the recreational guy. it's the hottest time of the year in the Bay. So keeping the date of the 16th, I think you guys should definitely keep that. And that's all I got to say. If you guys got any questions, let me know.
Appreciate the input.
All right.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands for questions or comments.
There's one.
Carl, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, guys, I'm just kind of curious, when do you think this will all shake out? When do you think you'll have the regulations in place?
I think mid-March is likely the earliest, but if we can make a decision on the start date sooner, we will let that be known for business planning purposes and trip planning purposes.
Thank you.
Nick, you want to go back to slide 3 and you could just
Mm-hmm.
put that
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah, so it's really after we've had our March 17th Massachusetts Marine Fisheries Advisory Commission meeting that we should have a better, firm idea of what the rules will be.
Okay, thank you.
Eric, you can unmute yourself.
All right, can you hear me again?
Yes.
All right. Well, this has been a great talk here. I forgot to tell you, a great presentation too. I got so focused on that fall fishery that I totally glanced over the 5 and 7 fish proposals at 1% and 2%. So I just wanted to add to my comment that once again, the May 16th opening 16 inches, and then for the sake of 1% and 2%, the extra fish or possibly extra 3 fish. It generally help. It would be a good shot in the arm to help us after all these years of decline, business wise and stuff like that. I think we've been saying this for years. I'm not going out there to catch every single fish every day. Like the angler has to, the angler has to close that loop. Okay, so we don't always get that, but as a business model, to be able to sell it, that's what we are. We're selling an experience. So I think for the matter of that 1% or 2% right there, that I please add that to my list of requests, and then if we can definitely look over that into the September 30th without that data that's shown at 30%, that's something to look into. But once again, thank you for putting this together, and looking forward to seeing how it comes out.
William Hatch, you're good to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks. I have a recommendation, and I know it's going to be a pain in the neck, but now that we have all this information of the potential changes and what the percentages are, I would recommend redoing the survey. I think you would get very different results now that we all have more information. I think I said it before, we all tried to speculate, and actually what the numbers show is completely different than what I thought in my mind. I never thought that going to 7 fish would even be an option, and seeing that it's only a 3% increase, that would definitely change a lot of the way I would fill out that survey. So that's just a recommendation I had. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Willie. We can, consider that perhaps when we actually know what we're aiming for and have some more kind of concrete options that would get to it. That might be a good opportunity to get some more input again.
Right. Eric, is that a new hand?
No, hold on. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. You're all good. Rick, you're good to unmute yourself.
Hello, good morning once again. Just a quick another comment I forgot to mention out. Would it be possible to put those graphs out public so that way the people who actually took those surveys know what the outcomes will be of their choices?
Yeah, I think that we will probably post a recording of this meeting on our YouTube channel, so they'll be able to see it through that mechanism. But one thing to note about the survey is that there were also a couple kind of open entry responses, so those really help to kind of inform why people voted in a certain way. So there's some ability for us to, interpret those responses better than just looking at, what the response was. So we have some additional information to help interpret those results.
Okay. Yeah, I just think that people would change their decisions based on if they knew the percentages changes on all the outcomes. So, all
Hmm.
right, appreciate your help. Thank you. Great presentation tonight, guys.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands in the queue right now.
All right. If there's no more comments, I want to thank everybody for attending tonight's public scoping meeting, and feel free to communicate with us by email. Any other thoughts you may have, especially since many of you have kind of learned what some of these different options could mean in terms of percentages. As Willie said, some of the results were surprising. So feel free to write to us. Nicola, what do you think over the next couple of weeks? Because we'd like to have a substantive conversation with our commission at our February 10th meeting, but the decision meeting wouldn't be until the March 10th meeting, I believe. Is it March 10th?
March 17th.
March 17th.
But yeah, I think the sooner the better, the next couple of
Yeah.
weeks, because that'll help inform the discussions that we have at the ASMFC and within the northern region states.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, on behalf of all the DMF staff and the Marine Fisheries Advisory Commission members who attended tonight, thank you, everyone, and have a great night.